Well, looks like I'm right on time, quarter before the hour, except it's an hour later. Hey, everybody, what's happening? It's Robert Phoenix. Yeah, normally I'd be up and running, live and kicking, 60 minutes in right now. But, I was putting together material for the show, and oh my God, it just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. And things began to pile up, pile on, pile up, pile on. And, at some point, I just don't know when to stop because really, if I wanted to, I could probably roll out a 3 hour, 4 hour show tonight. It wouldn't be any problem at all. What's going on there, Kestrel? Welcome to the show. It is nice and warm here. Not too warm tonight, and looks like the buggies are not out yet, but I'm sure they will be. Okay, what do we got? EC 2189 Kaku. There's Leanne 10 Dragon 14. What's going on? Michelle Canham Free. The lovely and talented Joan S. in the house. FUP 77. What's happening? There is Miranda. What's going on? You're the Miranda potato. No, that'd be the veranda. Anyway, hi, Miranda. Welcome back. Beth Berry in the house. There's Judy. Hi, Judy. Joe Dimitri. You stop when you're ready. All right. That sounds good. Kathy Steen. What's happening, Kathy? Sally H. Hi, Sally. Good to hear from you. I hope you're doing okay in the land of Oz. A lot of high, strange, and crazy there. Thor by the door. Steve is in the house. Rona Mosquito. Is that a columnist? Rona Mosquito. That sounds like a band. Rona Mosquito. Yeah, they're out there. I'm sure there are. JR, Jennifer Rubin, all the way from Tinseltown. What's happening, JR? Frank Bry. Howdy, Frank. There's Renee, Joe Mama, Eagle, ZXZ. Nice seeing you here. There's Maury. Hey, Maury. I saw you over in the Reality Check chat room yesterday. Getting around, getting a little Jay Widener and Johnny Enoch. I peeped in there for a little bit. It's a pretty good show. Jennifer Fitzgerald. Hey, Jennifer. There's my man Craig Simpson. What's going on? Hey, everybody say hi to Craig. Craig is, I did a great interview with Craig. He's got a great website called Radiant Creators. Our friend Masaki's been on there and a number of other people. I think it was it Ken Robald who just did a big interview with you on health. I haven't watched that, but I've had some of the people that watch this show say how terrific it was. And Craig is very interesting fellow and a very good interviewer. And I'll tell you, Craig, this whole thing with the golem just kept popping up after you and I talked about it. So, and if you haven't seen the interview that I did with Craig, please check it out. And I hope Craig will join me one of these days on the Friday Forecast as well. There's Christy Daniels. Hope you're doing well in your new time-space location. Christy, Nicholas Grimm in the house. Let's see, Talcha 88. There it is. How are you doing? There's Miss Dawn Hart. And let's see, there's Lynette. Hey, Lynette. My man, DJ MC Anna Wilson. Evan, I got your email. I'll be reaching back to you. We will connect. Let's see. You said, yes, I asked a question. Can't remember what it was. He didn't offer a response, however. Oh, well. Everybody's got their style. Everybody's got their style. Jay happens to be a Taurus. So, he has a very grounded style. Grounded. Fixed style. I myself am a Virgo, so I'm more mercurial. So I like to go back and forth between chat and the show. Okay, you're better now. Thank you. Good. Hey, there's Alexis. What's going on, Alexis? Good to see you. Darren, my man from the Big Easy. What's going on, Darren? What's the name of that interview again? Which one, with me and Craig? Craig and I were over on his website on Radiant Creators. Jay Widener over on Reality Check. Chana Miriam, what's going on? Roberto says hello back to you. Can we get a Jasper? Okay, so I had to order the bamboo fencing to basically fence off the back. he was on the show on Friday. You couldn't really see him, but on the Friday show with Eric Carlstrom, he was on the show. And boy, that was a show. Holy smokes, man. Even Charles agrees. That was a show. Oh, man. Scorpio rising in the house. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was the show. If you guys didn't see that one, hit the rewind button, go back to Friday. That's one of those shows where you're thinking, what's YouTube going to do with this one, right? Not that it was, hateful, or wasn't inflammatory in the sense that there was no call to violent action. But we started off. Dr. Eric Carlstrom is an expert in gang stalking and electronic targeting and things like that. So I've always wanted to have him on the show, and Steve had booked him for Freeman, and then sometimes I get a twofer with Steve. It's Freeman and me, which is fine. It's just great because Freeman has a whole different kind of style and vibe, and I got a whole different style and vibe. So you could have one person being interviewed by two different people, and you would get really two different shows in a lot of ways, even if it's the same person. Ty says, rough is an understatement, laugh out loud, but in 12th with Pluto retrograde, I didn't know what pain out. Oh, wow. Well, yeah. I went through that Pluto transit in Scorpio back in the 90s. Through my 12th house, hit my ascendant. Boy, had it. Isla Ren in the house. Yeah, I know. We're almost in Leo. I know, right? Man, it is blowing by. So the show with Dr. Carlstrom starts off where we get into the whole electronic surveillance and technology stuff and target individuals. And the interesting thing is that we both had a very similar experience in 2006. So like we were mirroring each other. Like he had his thing and I had my thing, and they were the same thing. And not only do we have the same thing, but we also experienced the care, the aftercare, or the care that took place afterwards in the same fashion, in the same way. Like it was a trip. It was really a trip. So that was cool, right? So we're going through that, and we're going through the targeting stuff. We're going through the targeted individual stuff. Year 2006. I think it was Linda Gordon came back and said that in 2006 it was called Operation Phoenix. It was being run out of the Bay Area. Lorraine Moret started to talk about this. This is one of the things that Lorraine Moret covered. What's going on, Ani? Good to see you. So there was actually a project that was going on during that time in the Bay Area called Project Phoenix. How about that? And I think Dr. Carlstrom, I don't think he was in Berkeley, but I think he was in Tulare. Because he was a professor at Cal State Stanislaus, which is Stanislaus County, which is the county that connects all the various counties or cities, rather, in the Central Valley. Okay. So as we're talking, he begins to quote the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which, by the way, I actually think is a very interesting document, because there have been people that have tried to refute it, and they claim it's a forgery. And there are other people who have said it is not a forgery, and it is something that is actually been validated, right? So you're going to get two sides of that story. And what's really interesting is, when we use the word Zion, Protocols of the Elders of Zion, people automatically think that this is a Jewish document, okay? Well, it might be, but Zion is also connected to the word Sion, which is Scion. And out of Sion, we get the Priory of Sion, which is, talked about in the in the Da Vinci Code books, right? So there are very interesting connections with Zion and the other word which is Sion. And when we look at the Priory of Sion, there are a lot of so-called interesting people in there, like Goethe, and its own kind of version of an illuminated secret society. So you could go down another kind of tunnel and look at it in that term in those regards, and where do those worlds kind of intersect, right? So he brought this up, and then we got into this discussion about the so-called consciousness, the consciousness of what he was bringing forward with the quote unquote individual Jewish person. Like, are they aware? Where are they with it? Do they understand it? Can they genuflect on it? Do they just, immediately say this is bullshit and hogwash? Or do they look and say, wow, there may be something going on in my religion or faith that is sort of deeply esoteric, occulted, and hidden away from me? And that, by the way, isn't just quote unquote in the Jewish tradition, right? So in Christianity, there's also other versions of that. You go into the Catholic Church, you have the Jesuits, and then you have a lot of child sacrifices and all kinds of weird shit. Pedophilia, clearly, with the Catholic priests inside the Catholic Church. That stuff is there, right? So that's another version. Now, do the Jesuits come out and write a document for world domination? Well, they may have, but it hasn't crossed my path. Okay. So even if you go into something like Tibetan Buddhism, and let's say you get up in the morning, you're chanting Om Mani Padme Hum, right? Om Mani Padme Hum, and you've got little prayer flags festooned in your patio. You don't even have to be Tibetan, by the way. You just be a Tibetan Buddhist. Do you know the relationship with the monks, the tulkus, and the young monks? Right? It was not pretty. Okay, it was not pretty. There's a whole relationship there that, again, more than likely child abuse. Okay. So, again, there are these occulted kinds of areas in these different faiths where, you can even talk about it being a Mason. A Mason's, okay, I'm going to do that third degree, and, I'm going to kind of, die to my other existence, and I'm going to, take on this new life. I've got my new brothers, my new lodge. I swear secrecy. You get that third degree, right? So, you basically, it's sort of like, in some ways, what's what I'm looking for, the Imitation of Christ, where you become Hiram Abiff. You're initiated as Hiram Abiff, and you are roughed up by the ruffians, and Hiram Abiff dies because he will not divulge the secrets of the lodge, right? So you get in, you start cruising around those early degrees, you're out doing good works, learning about how to be a better person, be a better man, be a son of God, son of the great architect of the universe, right? And then somewhere down the line, if you last long enough, you're like, whoa, like, that is not what I signed up for. Unless, of course, you're like, man, I really want some of that. This is exactly what I signed up for. You see, the Mormon Church, another example. You could be a practicing Mormon, blah, 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 blah. The deeper you go, the deeper you go, the deeper you go. Next thing you know, you're being initiated into being the god of your own planet. And how you get there is by converting what's called the Ebonites, right? It's a big part of Mormonism. You go out, you convert those dark-skinned people. And that's a little part of it. But there's the polygamy. I mean, this thing happens with belief systems and religions, right? So, when I brought that up, I was bringing it up specifically because of the group of people in the religion that Dr. Karlstrom was talking about. So we went on a very intense kind of tangent with it. And then he started quoting chapter and verse of these various rebbes, right, who are connected to Chabad Lubavitch. And these are not things that are made up. They're not lies. So what he did was he was basically saying, this is who we are. This is where we're going. These people are the people that will not be going there with us. And if they're going to be there with us, well, they're going to be doing our bidding, right? They're going to do our work for us. So he's bringing this stuff up. So that is not anything that he was making up or out of the public or the religious record, right? So I'm like, okay, well, this is interesting. We're going down a very intense kind of path for some people. Now, for other people, they thought, well, this is just, hackneyed, right? We're not going to get anywhere by recounting, a dubious tracked like the protocols of the elders of Zion. And even if these men did say what they said, right, the actual information would be so polarizing that most people would get hung up on sort of the barbed wire kind of fence of that, the demarcation of that kind of example. And so that they would pull back from it and say, well, Jesus, that's making me sound just like Jesus, that's making me sound like an anti-Semite. And I can get in real trouble for that, right? Because we've been conditioned around this whole idea with speech laws, hate speech, which is becoming like more in our face now than ever, much more in our face now than ever. It's really problematic. So the psychology of the person who begins to hear that says, well, you know what? That's like the forbidden zone. I really can't go there. And there's some interesting things that happen that are connected to that, right? Because for a while, communism was really a canard. It was like they threw this thing out there, which was, the committee, the House Committee on Un-American Activities, which was Joe McCarthy, and his guy was Roy Cohn, right? Roy Cohn was Joe McCarthy's lawyer. Roy Cohn being a link between Joe McCarthy and Donald Trump. And there are people that say that Donald Trump is a vehement anti-communist because of his relationship with Roy Cohn, and Roy Cohn was an anti-communist because he was part of the committee for activity of what is it? American anyway. It was the McCarthy Committee, Un-American Activities, Committee for Un-American Activities, right? So he was part of that committee. So just by his association and being connected with Joe McCarthy, it's like, well, Trump's got to be an anti-communist. Well, that's not always true. That is not always true. Roy Cohn could have been put into that place so that he could become a gatekeeper. Now, we're going to get into masks tonight. And I have very interesting correlations with masks, with January, with Capricorn, and with two asteroids, Juno and Vesta. So this should be really, really interesting when I go down Mask Alley. So, but Roy Cohn, could have been somebody who's like, okay, I'm going to steer this. I'm going to guide this. We're going to expose it to a certain level. We're going to make Americans believe, well, number one, there was a lot of anti-American activity going on. And there were people that were kicked out of Hollywood. Like Sean Penn's father was one of them, by the way. Sean Penn's father was an avowed communist. And he was writing during that time. He was a writer. So Sean Penn's father, he was out. So Sean Penn had to deal with that directly. Sean Penn is a red diaper baby. Okay. And I'm convinced totally from the moment he took his first breath to maybe this morning when he brushed his teeth, who knows, that he's a spook. Sean Penn's a spook. He's a spy. And you'll find spies all over Hollywood. That's what they do. They're spies. They're great spies. Why? Because they play roles. George Clooney is probably a world-class spy because he could go anywhere, do anything, hang with it, or at least he was. There's even that movie where he plays a CIA guy who is the handler of Chuck Barris and gets Chuck Barris to go out and do these killings. That's the role that George Clooney plays. He plays his handler. He's his handler in the CIA. I mean, do these movies really depict these people in fictional roles? No, they don't. They're actually telling you. I'm not saying he was Chuck Barris's handler. No, but I'm saying that he was depicting somebody who was in the CIA, right? So anyway, I think Roy Cohn probably was a guy that was a gatekeeper in a limited hang for Trump. I'm sorry, for McCarthy. And once McCarthy decided to take this thing further, they shut that shit down. And then McCarthy was, he was lambasted. His character was questioned. He's an alcoholic this, alcoholic that. And he was essentially ruined, right? He was ruined. He was a limited hang. So once that was over, it was like, okay, the commie thing is over. We got our 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 people, Sean Penn's father, Dalton Trumbo, Paul Robeson, a few others. Like, that's it. We did it. Boom. We got it out there. We had a problem. Problem's over. Okay. And then after that, there was a great deal of press, or what we would call propaganda, that painted Joe McCarthy out to be a certain way, that he was, egomaniacal, he was petty, he was vindictive, he had a short temper, he wasn't very bright, he was an alcoholic. So what they did is they began to, take pot shots at the messenger. And then over time, it was looked at, or it was painted that period in Hollywood was really kind of a farce, kind of a sham. There wasn't really that big of a threat. They picked out about 8 or 9 people. They made an example out of them, but they really shouldn't have had to go through what they went through anyway. So they cast that period and that actual event into doubt. That's what they did. It was like, there's no there. And then on top of that, they began to make fun of it, right? Oh, there's a commie under every bed. There's a commie under every bed. There's a commie around every corner. You may have a commie in your family, right? So what does that lead to? It leads to paranoia. Paranoia, of course, gets played up in a big, big way in Dr. Strangelove. It's a film based completely on paranoia. Very funny, too, by the way. Very, very funny. And by the way, adrenochrome and fluoride both show up in Stanley Kubrick's movie. Dr. Strangelove, where I learned to love the bomb. So we have this idea, right? This idea that, this thing was just, fucking ridiculous. It was just something that was, a witch hunt. There's no such thing as communism. It doesn't, right? And McCarthy, he was bad news, right? He was really, really bad news. But that's what they did. And so when you go back and you look at that time and you bring it up, people will laugh. I remember one time I did a reading for a guy in Philadelphia. Interesting character, let me tell you. But when I brought that up, and he was older, and he was like, all that horse shit about communism, right? It's like, oh, okay. In a moment like that, I'm not there to be confrontational, right? I'm not there to play the role of a teacher in that way. I'm there to work with the person's chart. So I try to leave that outside the experience. But anyway, that's what he thought, whatever. So what we have now is kind of the same thing with this idea of the protocols of Zion, right? It's like it's bullshit or whatever. Whether you think it's bullshit or not, right? It's a document. And if you look at the document and you step back and you go, this kind of happened. That thing there, that's kind of happened too. That's kind of happened too. Just like when you roll out, what is it, the 20 plans or whatever for total communist destabilization in the United States. We're about like at 16, right? And you go, yeah, that happened. Yep, that happened too. Yeah, that happened. Right. Or you go back and you look at the document Silent Weapons for a Quiet War, which is kind of like the more, agnostic version of the protocols. A lot of that stuff is in there, only updated versions with higher degrees of technology. And you look at that and you go, geez, that's, right. So these things happen, and they happen. But what happens then is we get this stigma around them. And if you go there with the stigma, then whether it's the communism, you're paranoid. You're just a paranoid. You're paranoid. That version of America is over with. Get with it, man. Get with the program. Upgrade your program, right? So same thing. Like if you go into the protocols of Zion, it's like, you're an anti-Semite. You're a Jew hater. You're all these things just for reading that document, even believing it. But remember, I said that there are 2 versions of Zion. There is Zion and SCION. Now, the document does not say protocols of the elders of the Jews. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It does not say that. It doesn't say protocols of the elder rabbis. It doesn't say that. Read the top. Read the headline. It does not say that. Right? It says Zion. Zion. And I already told you the interstitial connection between those 2 words and potentially 2 groups of people. And even if we were to extrapolate and say Zion, then we could say, well, it could be referring to Zionism. right? It could be Zionism. And trust me, there are Reformed Jews who are not down with Zionism. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. Wait a minute now. Wait a minute. That's not where we're at, right? That's not where we're at. We're doing something different. We're doing kind of the Unitarian version of Judaism, right? That's what they're doing in some ways. So even then, right, if you just like narrow it down to Zionism, it's not saying that that document is attributable to, the entire Jewish culture, right? So when you look at things like that are potentially really triggering, you have to break them down, and you have to have kind of a greater, ability to understand the etymology of something like that. It's really important. Language tells us things. It tells us things. It also tells us things sometimes in ways that are not necessarily overt. There's a covert version of language. Okay. So anyway, we brought that up. A lot of that stuff came up. And again, part of what I'm doing here was part of what I was doing on Friday, was to try to expand the topic of conversation. Now, Dr. Carlstrom and I come at the world from very, very different perspectives in a lot of ways. Like, he's a Baptist. And, I'm an astrologer. So we come at, and when I told him ahead of the show that I was an astrologer, he was like, "Oh, really? You make a living off of that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And I had no idea we were going to go down, the Pentecostal road there at the end of the show, which is fine. Again, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with Christians. I don't have a problem with anybody, really. If you're true and you're clear, you may have a different kind of, catechism that has to do with things like the end game and the Apocrypha and how you stay within the lines of your specific relationship with your God or your Lord or whatever, right? But I don't have a problem with anybody. I certainly have a problem with Catholics, or I'm sorry, Christians. I'll throw Catholics in there. We've had E. Michael Jones on the show. Not this one. I'm not sure he'd come on this one. But we've had him on the show for, 4 times. I love talking to Michael. I love talking. He knows more about Catholic theology than I'll ever learn in this lifetime and the next. I mean, the guy's brilliant. And he also understands culture in a very big way. And, so he's a great mind. And again, he'll throw out ideas that, they will make you, for some people, it'll be very uncomfortable. Very, very uncomfortable. One of these days, who knows? Maybe I'll get a 5% around here, or, maybe I'll get this guy from NCAF, and maybe have some other ideas that might be uncomfortable in some ways, right? I mean, that could be a really interesting conversation. We may not agree, as long as we're respectful, and we may not agree, but this is how Friday unfolded, and I thought it was great. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was important, and I think for some people it was very eye-opening in a lot of ways. And if I had to do all over again, I'd do that show in a heartbeat, and I do it just the way that we did. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's really good. It is really, really, really good. Really good. All right, let's jump into the present. Here we go. Dear blessed and holy Father, my God, the great central sun, within universal light, which is the light of Yeshua Sananda Emmanuel, we ask that only the highest and best information come through this channel at this time. Only the highest best wisdom come through this channel, YouTube right now, at this very time. We also ask, and not just ask, but embrace the qualities of courage and faith and flexibility and wisdom, heart, humor, discernment, timing, discipline, and above all, love. We ask that any karmic residue be cleansed, clarified, purified, and removed from this stream, so that we may re-enter into our experience as sovereign as we were when we came in. So be it. There we go. Done. All right. Happy birthday. Oh, yeah. Yeah, happy birthday, Faith. Faith is in the process of deep liberation. Congratulations. You're doing a good thing. You guys talking about de Blasio, Warren Wilhelm Jr. I have a problem with the Karens. Yeah, the Karens. I don't know. I have a problem with the Karens, theoretically. I don't have the problem with Karens in real life. I don't have a problem with the Karens in real life. By the way, have you seen that woman who was busted? Man, I'm going to play her videos tomorrow. I'm going to play her videos tomorrow on 15 Minutes of Flame. This woman who got busted for painting over the Black Lives Matter sign in the road. Holy smokes, man. This woman is a certifiable badass, man. She is a badass. She got busted. Watch the video. I'm going to play the videos for you tomorrow. She goes out broad daylight. I think it's Harlem, if I'm not mistaken. She goes there in broad daylight. And she's got cans of black paint. And this woman's a sister, right? She's a sister. And man, she is God-fearing. Like, in a way, she's like serious God-fearing. Like, Jesus Christ, in the name of Jesus Christ, you stand away from me. I'm telling you, man, this woman had a force field. She had a force field. And then the cops show up and they try to remove her, but they kind of can't on some level. It's really interesting to watch. And she's on her hands and knees and she is smearing black paint over the Black Lives Matter sign in the streets. I'm like, holy smokes, man, that is commitment right there. I mean, she's trying to get every single moment she can out of like covering that up. And then, then the mob descends on her and boom, and she's like, firing off the Jesus bullets. She had a semi-automatic, she had a JC-47, right? She had a JC-47 that she was just mowing these people down. It was really something to watch. And finally, they take her away. Well, guess what? Because there's such a liberal policy when it comes to arresting people and now letting them go in the city of New York, they let her go. She's back at it that night or the next day. At night, doing the same thing with her friends. It is holy smokes, man. Tucker Carlson comes back on Monday. I hope he didn't pay a visit to Camp David and get his ass cloned. But I do want to see what Tucker Carlson does with that. Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. One individual that woman and her friend and the guy that was videotaping, but that one, her friend, I don't care what you believe about America, right? Whether you're a patriot or whatever, but if you're on the fence or your patriotism is tepid, that woman will turn up the heat, man. She'll get you boiling. I'm telling you. And she on the second video, she has these two streaks of black paint. It's like she's got war paint going on. It was something else. I can't wait to play it for you tomorrow. All right. I don't want to waste a lot of time. Let's jump in. Let me check out where you guys are. Let's see. What else do we have here? Tucker does perpetuate the Demo-Republican dialectic. He does, but you know what? So look, he has to. He has to do it. He has to do it. But if you watch Tucker, really, and what does he have to do? Because, well, I mean, that's kind of the format that he's in. But if you really watch Tucker, he's called the Republicans out. Are you kidding me? He has called the Republicans out big time over the last 4 weeks. And these are some of his highest rated shows, right? Some of his highest rated shows where he was taking on the Republicans. By the way, that does include one Donald Trump. So he's not just being a lapdog like for the Republicans. No, that's Sean Hannity's territory. If you want that, stick around after Tucker, you'll get that. But lately, Tucker, not happening. Remember, he's a Taurus, and Uranus is starting to conjunct his Taurus planets. What does that mean? That means Tucker Carlson is taking a radical position. Just remember that. Astrology seldom lies, okay? Seldom lies. He's the only person I watch. I can't stand Hannity. Phony. Big time phony. Tucker's not phony. Is he all in? I think he's getting closer to being all in. He's about as close as being all in as you can get, right? He's about as close as being all in as you can get inside that format, doing what he's doing. He's taken on some pretty powerful forces, and people want to, ditch him. They went after his top writer. They found something his top writer wrote when he was like, what, in high school or some kind of, I don't know, boarding school or prep academy or some shit like that on Twitter. And he had to fire his writer, his top writer, because they're going after him. They're going after him, right? If he wasn't somebody that they wanted, if he wasn't somebody who was a threat, and it could be to both sides, by the way, because he has not been kind to Lindsey Graham. That is for damn sure. That is for damn sure. And he hasn't been kind to a lot of other Republicans lately too. So Tucker Carlson, I keep turning him on, and most of the time, every night I watch him, he's meeting the spit test. He is meeting the spit test. Okay, let's get on. Let's get into it. Let's get into it. Okay, here we go. So, okay, let's stay with the theme. Let's stay with the theme. And the theme here is whatever's going on with Antifa, Black Lives Matter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So one of the things that I've been really spending a lot of time with over the last, well, not a lot of time, but enough time, right? Super condensed saturation period. I've been spending time with this idea of how staged our reality is. And I mean staged in a big way, right? Because I've gone back and I've looked at, of course, we spent a lot of time with the George Floyd thing. It's dubious. Let's just be fair about it. That George Floyd event is dubious, very dubious. And there are all kinds of, and I've gone into this, I've got into the double aspect, the Gemini aspect, the Minnesota aspect, the Prince aspect, the Purple Revolution aspect. I've got into all this stuff, right? The 202 days between when Prince died and when Donald Trump was elected. Here we have the number 22. We're in the year 2020. There's year 22. The same amount of time that George Floyd was being suffocated was 8:43. That's when the first plane hit the theoretically hit the first of the two towers. The two towers being Gemini, Saturn in Gemini, new moon in Gemini on 9/11/2001. I mean, so we've been there, man. We've been there. There's the Masonic angle. There's a lodge just down the road. Just down the road. There's a lodge just down the road. So, and we've got into the Derek Chauvin. Well, there's this one guy, and then there's this other guy, and they don't look anything alike, right? So we get into two Dereks. So the Gemini thing is popping. Stephen Jackson says, well, that's my twin. Oh, really? That's your twin? George Floyd is your twin? Really? Oh, that's weird. It's a metaphorical term. Right. Well, Stephen Jackson and George Floyd's father, I believe George Floyd was a Mason. Well, clearly both fathers. I think Stephen Jackson is engaged in Freemasonry and right down the street. So we've gone through this and all the weird angles and all the weird shit. And, George Floyd's, family going to the UN, right? Oh, UN, we need you to intercede. I mean, really? Really? You'd be kidding me. So George Floyd is dubious. I think it's a false flag. Now, some people say, well, he was killed because he was involved in this thing with this club, and there's money laundering and Chinese counterfeit stuff, and then the Mexican cartels, and that could be true. That would be an alternate version. It's like, okay, well, he was off, he was eliminated, or maybe he was just taken out of circulation. Maybe, okay, dude, you're hot button. We got to get you out of here. We got to take you out of circulation. So maybe that, I bet it's dubious, right? Then I went back and I started to look at the Ahmaud Arbery stuff. I'm like, what's really going on here? Why did it take them 76 days or something like that to make any kind of, real arrests or book any real charges? Like, what's going on here? And the whole thing is odd. It's very odd because, of course, they happen to have him on some video camera, kind of scoping around these unbuilt homes, right? And then there's the conflict where the guys in the truck theoretically confront him because word has been out on the street that he's been around and he's peeping and thieving. It's kind of a Trayvon Martin replay. And then there's this tussle that takes place. Now, I've watched that and I've looked at that tussle. I'm like, what's really happening here? What is really happening here? Why did these guys bring their shotguns? That's number one, right? That's number one. Why would they be videotaping this? That's number two. Because if, and maybe this gets to this idea that the people from the South just aren't very bright, which, by the way, I don't buy. Okay, a lot of smart people in the South. But if you were in an event like that and you were chasing down a guy, do you want any kind of video evidence? Do you want any video evidence? Really? Because if you're serious about that, you got your video phone in your pocket. You got your smartphone in your pocket. Because if anything's going to happen, guess what? It is your word and everybody else's word there against who's with Ahmaud Arbery again? Yeah, nobody. Okay? Nobody. If you're real serious about that, you don't bring your cell phone out. Well, what are you going to do? You bring your cell phone out because you want to somehow make sure that if something happens, that you could capture it, and these guys could use this video in a court of law to defend themselves with a guy who's not carrying a weapon. Oh, no. No. And when we see these cop videos or these other videos, like when the moment really comes, you don't see shit. Really. I mean, theoretically, things are chopped out and blocked out. But when it comes to, the murder, so-called murder of somebody, oh yeah, it's right there. It's right there. They're playing Steven Spielberg with that moment. So think about that. Why would they do that? Now, put yourself in Ahmaud Arbery's shoes. I guess they were hiking boots or work boots or something like that. Those were the shoes. Why would you try to wrestle a shotgun from somebody? Why would you do that? Knowing full well that there was another guy with a shotgun. Okay? Why would you do that? You think you could take him? You're desperate. You turn the tables on him. Someone get the shotgun, kill him, start killing everybody else. Right? What is he? Wesley Snipes, Carl Weathers? What's going on here? And by and large, there is a very, very different psychology of the individual and the psychology of the group. Okay. When people are in groups, they tend to have a lot more courage, and they have a lot more false courage. They have a lot more latitude to do things they would not normally do by themselves. This is the psychology of the group and the mob. Rarely does the individual do that. The individual instinctively knows that the odds are not in their favor, that they are outnumbered. So why would that individual in that moment take that guy on with a shotgun, knowing full well there was another guy with a shotgun? Right? Oh, he was afraid of his life? Okay, well, there's a lot of things that are going on here. So I looked at that event and I brought that event into my, sort of processing system. Like, did this thing really happen even? Did it really happen? Was it a staged event? We don't know. For all intents and purposes, those guys that were out there with that truck, they could have belonged to, some organization, some group, some lodge. We don't, you don't know. You don't know until you really drill down and try to understand and question some of these details, right? So I'm of the mindset that the Ahmaud Arbery thing, there's a very good chance it certainly didn't happen the way that they said it did, and it may not have even happened at all. Okay, I'm just saying. I'm just using logic to break down everything that I've just told you about, from the guy who is going to take the video and indict everybody, to somebody who is in a very vulnerable situation with about 5 people around them, one of whom has a shotgun. Who knows what's up, what else they're packing in the truck. People just don't do that unless they're completely whacked out and completely high, which may have been the case, at which point a toxicology report should have been run and said, well, this guy is Rodney King times 10. Okay, at that point, then you've got a whole different kind of narrative. But again, you look at, well, oh, there's that video. There's that video of him. He's skulking around that unfinished home, like it's establishing that he was there. It's very weird stuff. In that neighborhood, I believe, was about 14 or 15 miles away from where he actually lived. So that was the lead in to the George Floyd. Actually, the first event was the Briona Taylor event, which is very bizarre. And I just started to look into the Briona Taylor event. And the circumstances are really strange. They're really strange. It's like these cops go into her apartment, at least around March 1st or something like that. They go into her apartment in Louisville. She's studying to be a nurse, by the way. Okay. She's studying to be a nurse. And they bust in because apparently they had a warrant, some kind of weird warrant, because there was some like theoretical drug stuff going on in there or in that neighborhood. So supposedly they bust into the wrong apartment. Now, her boyfriend, she's in bed with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend pulls out a gun and starts firing at the police. And they counted, about 25 or 28 rounds? And the boyfriend is even hit, okay? He's not even hit. How does that happen? So are we to think that all 25 or 28 rounds just went right into Briona Taylor and not a single bullet hit the guy that pulled the gun? You would think that lights are on. He's holding the fucking gun. And they've released him, by the way. There are no charges against Briona Taylor's so-called boyfriend. What is really going on here? Right? So we have the Briona Taylor event. Then there's Ahmaud Arbery, right? And this is all happening now in the shadow of COVID. They're setting the stage. And when I saw that Ahmaud Arbery piece come up, especially when they decided they were going to charge those guys, 76 days after the fact, right in the nape of the COVID event, I knew it. I'm like, get ready. Here comes the next thing. Here comes the next thing. It wasn't Ahmaud Arbery, but it's like, here comes the next thing. And guess what? You saw the next thing. And I said it on Twitter, where they're going to transition from one trauma event-based experience collectively to the next one. And boy, did they ever. Okay. So there were 3 of them. 3 is an important number. Okay. 3 is an important number. You want to wrap your head around 3 events. So start looking around 3 events now. What are coming up in 3s? So the thing that I'm starting to see now are people getting either arrested or they're being even attacked for not wearing the mask. Keep your eyes on the 3 mask wearing events. One happened to be in Montreal. Now, again, we have to ask ourselves, is it real? Is it real? Looks pretty real on video because it's happening at a mall, and they hit the guy with pepper spray. Now, was everybody told to cough on cue? I mean, I don't know. I mean, some of this stuff can get pretty Hollywood-like, if you know what I mean. But that's where you want to keep your eye on. I think the next 3 things are going to be around the mask situation, which is really, they're just going to want everybody to wear a mask. They're getting people, they want people entrained so that they will not be able to enter into a store, any store, across the nation if they don't wear a mask. Because what they're saying now is they're saying that you won't be able to buy, sell, or trade, theoretically, without a mask. Okay? Now, guess what's happening? Cash is going away, right? The coin thing. We got the coin thing. Some stores are saying, look, you just got to use your debit card. You got to use your debit card. So, okay. Then the third event happens to be what? The vaccine that's coming. So the mask is to get people entrained to take the vaccine. The mask is to be able to get people entrained so that they can basically be told that, oh, you're not going to use cash anymore. Okay, we'll do what you tell us to do. All right, we'll do that. So the mask it's about more too. I'm going to show you this. The mask is about entrainment. And it has to do with money, and then it's the vaccine. You put it all together. And then what do? You consent. You consent because what they've done is they've sort of cut off these exits, right? They've cut off these exits. Now, I was reading that there was a family in Arkansas, or was it Kentucky? A family in Kentucky who, whatever you do, do not take the COVID test, okay? There are people who stood in line and the line was too long and they've left and they've come home and they got their test back and it was positive. You don't want to do that, okay? You don't really want to do that. And I'm just going to be straight up. You probably don't want to go to a hospital in general, okay? That's probably not a good path right now. I'm saying in general. Now, if there's an emergency, I'm not telling you to sit home and bleed out and die, okay? I'm not telling you that. I'm not a medical doctor. But it seems to me like the potentiality for something random to show up while you're in the hospital is greater than usual or normal, particularly when we read that there are certain statistics that are not panning out as they are showing up now in the state of Florida. Okay. I would probably do my best to stay healthy. Stay healthy. And that even includes things like, I know there are people out there that like to do, adrenalized activities. Yeah, you may want to just kind of think about that a little bit. I know there are people that, like do hard shit and, ride motorcycles or mountain climb or, you push it. It's like, and that's not to say that weird stuff can't happen if you're just walking around daily life, because I know it can. I've seen people just step off a curb and they've shattered their ankle for like 2 years in microsurgery. So it could be something mundane. Okay. But just be smart. Just be smart. You don't want to really put yourself somehow in harm's way so that you may have to go somewhere, right? You may have to. I'll give you another little tidbit of advice. If you're in an urban area or a related urban area, and you have to drive through an urban area, or have to drive on a freeway near an urban area, please make a habit of buckling yourself in. Please make a habit of buckling yourself in. Because if somehow something happens and they're blocking a freeway or they're blocking your car, lock your door and buckle yourself in. Very important. The locking of the door is number one, and then the seat buckling is number two. I got to get better at that. I'm kind of rebellious. I don't always buckle my seatbelt. But do that. Make it a habit. Drive with your doors locked. That way they can't pull you out. If they try to smash your window, then guess what happens? Now what we have with that is we have an intent to hurt and harm you, in which case you can step on the pedal and you can not slam these people, right? But you can move forward so that they cannot attach themselves to your vehicle. And you don't have to go fast. You can go 5 miles per hour, 6, 7, 8, get it up to 10. Don't go in a straight line, kind of swerve a bit, right? If you swerve, you're bringing a different pattern. They're not used to the swerve thing. They get out of the way. So I'm just again, just telling you, if you're in those areas, precaution number one, lock your doors. Number two, buckle your seatbelt, right? And if something happens, something shatters, then you can literally, accelerate slowly and get out of harm's way. All right. Okay. I was about to make a joke there. I had restraint. So, all right, where am I going with this? Okay. So now we've got, what are we really questioning? We're really questioning two things. We're questioning the, and then we're questioning the other event, the George Floyd event, Ahmaud Arbery event, and the reality of those two events and why are they happening, in tandem with one another. And I got into this with Dr. Eric Karlstrom, and it's about re-engineering, remodification, and creating this kind of open air re-education center. Now, I did want to talk about the thing that happened in Kentucky. And Kentucky's a state to watch, by the way, because that's Louisville's in Kentucky, right? That's where the Briona Taylor thing happened. And there was a couple, they tested positive for COVID, right? They took the test. And then they were told to self-quarantine, and they said, well, no, we're not going to do that. We don't have any symptoms or anything. Well, guess what happens? I think it was like 8 people. They love the number 8. The 8 people show up at her door. One guy's in a hazmat suit. Okay. And they stick ankle bracelets on everybody in the family. And they say, you have 200 feet around your house. That's as far as you can go. So now they're under house arrest because they tested positive. All right. They tested this thing for positive. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. Just complete nutters. So do yourself a favor. Try to stay healthy. Don't take any undue risks. Okay. And if you can, try to avoid going into one of those institutions. You know, there are doctors that you can see. I'm a big fan of functional medicine. There's usually a functional medicine practitioner within 50 to 75 miles of where you live. If you're near an urban area, semi-urban area, fortunately, we have one in this town. We got another one a couple towns over, and those people can be very helpful. Now they can't do triage. Okay, they can't do triage, but they can help you in other ways. So if you can afford it, right? Do the functional medicine route. Okay, so the reason why I'm talking about this now, especially with these events, and it's like, okay, reality is not what we think it is. It is not what we think it is. And I've been thinking a fair amount about this Antifa and Black Lives Matter, right? They're the two faces, right? They're the two faces. The two faces of this thing. Antifa, Black Lives Matter. Antifa, Black Lives Matter. Antifa, Black Lives Matter. You have a few other faces trying to, insert their way into the conversation. But those are the two. Now, if you go back you go back, you look at Black Lives Matter, like who's in charge of the funds for Black Lives Matter? It is Susan Rosenberg. And who is Susan Rosenberg? Susan Rosenberg was a member of the Weather Underground. Okay. She's a member of the Weather Underground. She went to jail. She went to prison. They blew up buildings. I remember I read somewhere, well, at least the Weather Underground blew up buildings and not people. Yeah, there were people that died in the buildings. The person was a complete moron. So what happened with the Weather Underground? They went, they were infiltrated. They were infiltrated. All right, Craig's got the link up. Thank you, Craig. Appreciate that. The Weather Underground, they weren't even infiltrated. You get into the COINTELPRO stuff, the Weather Underground was connected to Alphabet. Okay, they were, because what did they do? They came in and they stole the anti-war movement from SDS. So they had the SDS conference, and by the time it was over, the Weather Underground, the Weathermen were running the whole show. They were running the whole anti-war movement, and those people don't do that unless they've had very significant training. Very, very significant training. And I would, again, I haven't gone down a lot of their backgrounds with the exception of Bill Ayers, whose father was like the head of the different power companies in Chicago. So, Bill Ayers is upper middle class, which you'll find with a lot of these hirsute revolutionaries, right? But I believe that they were connected to the intelligence agencies, particularly one of the alphabets, the one starting with a C and then the other two letters after that. And of course, we have connections there with Bill Ayers' protege, one Barry Soetoro, who seems to have taken position with the CIA company at some point between his so-called time at Occidental College and his time at Columbia, right? There was a little bit of I guess this is bumpier. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on with these people and who they're connected to. So then we look at Antifa and, who are they supposedly connected with? Well, this whole tradition coming out of the anti-fascistas and Europe. And of course, there's the Soros money and all that. And it would not be too far of a stretch if you wanted to make those connections with BLM, Weather Underground, because those connections are there, also with Antifa, that they would both be operations, that they would both be fronts, okay? And they would both be used by certain intelligence agencies in order to do what they're doing. It would not be that far of a stretch, to be honest with you, because we're in Gemini, right? And Gemini is a sign. We're not in the sign of Gemini. We are in the true node of Gemini. And Gemini is the sign that represents duality, right? Two faces, an alias. So we have to, I think, be ready to reimagine. I love that word now. We need to reimagine policing. We need to reimagine education. We need to reimagine the family. We need to just reimagine everything. right? That's the new word. I think we need to reimagine our relationship or our concepts of BLM and Antifa. We have to reimagine that maybe, just maybe, just maybe, they're not as random. They're not as, how should we say, organized as one might think. Okay. And to bring about any number of things. I'm going to talk a little bit about Bret Weinstein tonight. Some of you might know who he is. He was the guy that was teaching at Evergreen College, and he stood up to the politically correct mindset. I'm going to talk a little bit about him tonight. And Emily and I are going to do a bigger breakdown on the Weinstein brothers. And I have some thoughts about what's going on there. Because we live in a world that's dominated by the Hegelian dialectic. Problem, reaction, solution. Okay. So really, is the solution going to be a top-down, sort of communistic, Bolshevistic world that's being run essentially by the World Economic Forum, the Rothschilds, the World Bank, the IMF, the Council of Foreign Relations, the UN? Is that going to be that version? And is everybody going to be like a soft commie? And are we all going to, pledge our green allegiance to the planet Earth and all have all of our property taken away from us? And I mean, that is the problem, right? On a certain level, for a certain group of people, that's the problem. We're seeing that and identifying that as the problem. These people, these groups, who's behind them, the intel people that are entangled, that's the problem. Well, what is the reaction? Well, that's going to be the interesting part now, isn't it? Is it going to be the reaction of Donald Trump and Bill Barr, sending guys into Portland to basically disappear people? Is that going to be part of the reaction? Or is there another part of the reaction that's going to be kind of woven into this thing? And then what is the solution? What is the solution? What if the solution wasn't somebody like Kamala Harris or who else? Joe Biden or Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie? What if they were actually identified as the problem, but not the solution? So then what would that solution be? Well, I have some ideas around it. And it has to do with a couple of interesting things. And I'll get into more of this with Emily, because what we're seeing is the death of libertarianism right before our very eyes. The Libertarian Party is over. It's done. They've imploded. They're basically saying now that Ron Paul colluded with Russians. Okay. So Libertarian Party, if you're a libertarian, whatever this thing was, like, the minute Gary Johnson stepped onto that stage and was high as a fucking kite and couldn't tell you where Aleppo was, like, that's really when it was over. I think it might have been even over before that with Ron Paul. I loved Ron Paul. I think Ron Paul threw in the towel. I kind of think Ron Paul, I hate to say this, but I think Ron Paul was there to do something, maybe get some ideas out for his son. I mean, you can make a case for that. But I watched him on that campaign, and, he had a ton of money. He had a ton of money. And Ron Paul knew. I mean, people were real. I contributed money to it, to his campaign. He's having these money bombs. The mainstream didn't want to pay any attention to him. I mean, that was something. I mean, you had to pay attention to that. But he had all this money, and he did not challenge any of these vote counts, which I thought was particularly weak. Because if he couldn't get a good vote count anywhere, then he was screwed. And I think the first time he really got screwed on the vote count was, I think it was New Hampshire, but then Iowa, I think, really screwed him over. So and I kept saying, man, spend that money, man. You got a ton of money. Throw it out these vote counts, so that when you go forward, if you go through these primaries, they're going to try to treat you better and maybe get a better vote. He didn't do that, though. And I'm watching him just kind of, fade into the sunset. And then 2012 rolls around. I'm just like, not interested. So for me, the Libertarian Party was really over about midway through that election. Okay. But now it's really over. Like they're just, they're having the senator and the Caesar moment, right? To the Libertarian Party. But there's a new Libertarian Party coming. And that's based around Bret and Eric Weinstein and the so-called dark intellectual web. I'm going to get into that. Emily and I will really get into that later in the week. So again, now we're going to start to try to think about this thing that we're in from a different perspective. Okay. We're going to try to think about, we're going to try to expand the idea of who these people are, what these groups are, who are really behind these groups. What's their intent? What's their goal? You know, what are they trying to move into place as a result of this? Now, all the other stuff is looking pretty real, by the way. You know, the vaccine stuff, right? The get your head wrapped around, you're going to do certain shit in a certain way. I mean, that stuff is happening. I mean, we're living in a Skinner box right now. We are living in a Skinner box. But again, if we follow the Hegelian dialectic from our perspective, not their perspective, you know, the other theoretical other side, but they may even be like kind of roped into this, right? That the perspective is there's a problem. How do we react to the problem? And what is the solution to the problem? I'm going to get into a little bit of that. So just wrap your head around this idea that the forces that we're dealing with in the world right now, the forces of conflict, the forces of strife, the forces of organized social deconstruction, that their links and their back channels might be very different than you imagine them to be. Okay? I'm just saying. That doesn't mean I condone it. That doesn't mean that there aren't some really terrible things happening. And believe me, there are. I'm seeing and witnessing these random crime sprees, which basically is turning the United States into an even more dangerous version of, like, you know, Sao Paulo or Rio, you know, favela style justice. But at least in the favela, you know, you have people that can stand up for themselves and the cops stay out. Here, you stand up for yourself and they're walking up to your house and taking your pea shooters away. All right. So I'm going to get into a chart now. Where is the epicenter of all this? Hey, Carol, what's happening? Where is the epicenter of all this? The epicenter happens to be Portland. So what I want to do is I'm going to look at Portland's chart. You guys are going to love this. You're going to love this. This is some shit right here. All right. What do we got? Is it up there? Ah, there she is. There she is. The favelas are packed by powerful, damn right there. By the way, if you want to see a great movie, truly great movie, with some very difficult scenes to watch, City of God. City of God. Yes. Maury says, our links and back channels are not what they seem or not what they think they are. Okay, I would agree with that too. I mean, you got to use your discernment, right? You got to figure this shit out for yourself. And some of this, by the way, happens to coincide with what I'm going to talk about with the intellectual dark web. Okay, all right, Portlanders, let's go. Yeah, great film, City of God, man, brilliant movie. It's up there, one of my top, I think, 20 movies of all time. There's a scene in the middle where a kid gets killed. They have to kind of fast forward through that scene every time. Yeah, and even the TV series afterwards, right, that they did, very good. Brilliant. All right. So let's get into the conversation. Here we go. Let's take a little trip to Portland. So Portland, theoretically, now came into its charter on the 10th of November. 10th of November. I think that was I did a read for somebody in New Zealand who is 10th of November, their birthday. Shout out, Susan. That was just last week. 1843, right? So what are we looking at here? 12:23 p.m. We got around to signing some papers. And look what we have here. We have Aquarius on the ascendant. Now, Portland's a kooky, quirky kind of town. Am I right? It's a kooky, quirky kind of town. There was a minor league baseball team there called, guess what? The Portland Mavericks. And it was owned and operated by Bing Russell, who was Kurt Russell's father. Bing Russell happened to be a B-grade movie actor, also loved baseball, did instructional baseball films. He was kind of a pioneer in the whole instructional baseball film world. Kurt, of course, his son, was in his instructional baseball films, including a young Japanese kid who lived nearby and who eventually would wind up actually playing for the Portland Mavericks. Now, Kurt Russell, I think, played for a brief spell in the California Angels farm system. So he's got a little bit of baseball cred in his background. Of course, Russell is one of those Illuminati family names, just saying. So his dad started the Portland Mavericks, and boy, were they Mavericks. Like there's a movie on Netflix documentary. It's called The Bastards of Baseball or something like that. It's about the Portland Mavericks documentary. It's a great documentary. And it shows you how wild, how kind of independent and anarchic. They were an independent baseball team. So what is baseball? It is a team sport, right? Yeah, it's a team sport where you have individuals. To me, baseball is probably the most Aquarian of the sports because everybody is on a team, right? They all have to do their thing. They all have to interact and interrelate, but nobody can do your thing for you. They can't do your thing for you. Like nobody can run over and go get the ball, pick it up for you and hand you the ball. Like in football, that could actually happen. Like if you fumble a ball, there's your buddy. Your buddy's there to pick it up. He's there to save your ass, right? And hopefully, advance the ball. Or if you miss a block, let's say you miss a block, well, there's a running back who's sitting back there and he picks up the guy that's rushing and he picks up the block. Right? Football can do that. Football is a sport about camaraderie and war. Baseball is totally Aquarian because nobody can do anything for you. You are on your fucking own in baseball. But guess what you have to do? You have to do things with other people, right? You have to do things with other people. And so when you do things with other people and it's all together, what do you have? You have the epitome of the team and Aquarianism, in my estimation. The individual is able to be the individual at every single position. Correct? Yes. And they are connected to a group effort. All right, so that's baseball. It's an Aquarian sport. We've set the stage for the Portland Mavericks, kind of a kooky, quirky kind of baseball team. Very interesting, nonetheless. And then we also have the weird, kooky, quirky Portlandia, which was a fairly well-known TV series, right? Portlandia, about how weird Portland is, how quirky Portland is, right? Fits right into that Aquarian kind of first house. And what do we have here? Well, guess what? We got Mars, we got Neptune, we got Juno. I'm going to talk about Juno. And then at that time, Eris was at 27 Aquarius. Now, a lot of, we talk about Eris now. Eris has been in Aries for a long time. Here it's at 27 Aquarius. And we know that Eris is connected with violence, right? Like that's a planet that's connected with violence. I'm sorry. It's an asteroid it's an asteroid that's connected with violence. Like it is violence, right? That's what it is, violence. But we know that it's connected with violence because we see the association now, and has been for a while, in Aries. But here in the Portland chart, it is right there in the first house. Now, I'm going to talk about Juno. So this is a really interesting kind of aspect here, because I've been looking into the masks of tragedy and comedy, right? One is pathos, and the other what is mirth, right? So I'm going to look at those two masks, and they relate to the mask of Janus, which I'm going to get into as soon as I get out of this chart. And Juno plays a role with Janus mythology. You'll see this, right? So we have Juno, we have Eris retrograde, that angry energy of Eris that we've associated. Well, it's in the first house here. So all this in the first house operates like it's Aries or Mars. So we have literally what we call dignity here, right? This is dignity. So Mars is in the dignity position of the chart. It's in its own house. So Portland has always had a spirit of rebellion inside of the city. It's been a part of the city. I'm going to go back. I'm going to show you some photos, some historical photos from Portland's politically charged past. Okay, I'm going to show you guys that's not just what's happening now in Portland, but there's a history there. All right. At 1 Aquarius, it's right at the beginning of the sign. Right at the beginning. By the way, you know who else has Aquarius at 1 degree in their chart? China. So China and Portland have the same degrees of their ascendant. Isn't that interesting? That's very interesting. So both of them are going to have Saturn hit their ascendant. Jupiter is hitting Portland's ascendant too. So the super conjunction that's coming up right on Portland's ascendant, right on Portland's ascendant. So how is that going to play out? Is it going to play out that they're going to expand their rebellious nature, right? Is it going to spread like wildfire to neighboring Oregon cities somehow? I don't think so. I don't. But Saturn in the first house also represents some kind of reformation, right? The way Saturn works is when it goes through your 12th house, it's gone through the chart for theoretically 30 years. So the last time Portland was in this position was in 1990, right? So we're talking about the reset between 1990 and now. So everything that's historically connected, culturally, politically, it's all part of the 30-year cycle and the 30-year canon of Portland, so that by the time we finally get to the super conjunction at the end of the year, Portland is going to reset. Now, there are a couple of things that can happen. Number one, there could be a greater influence on authority with Saturn here, okay? Much greater influence of authority on Saturn. Now, there could be something else, but it wouldn't be for about another 2 years when we get into a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which Portland will. And that could go two ways. So that's going to be 2022. That could be that Portland could either be completely reformed, right? Because when Saturn hits Neptune in the natal chart, I call that the come to Jesus moment. That's where you've got to get really sober around your Neptunian issues. Saturn comes in and says, oh, wait a minute. We have to limit the influence of Neptune here in your life. This could be a very sober moment. What would it take for it to be sober? What would it take for Portland to go through something and basically say, okay, man, shit's fucked up. We had a beautiful city, got burned down, shithole. And Portland, for me, was always a cool place to go. I lived in Olympia, so I like going to Portland. And in fact, when I was going through my Saturn return, which also happened to be Portland's Saturn return, I did a column for a magazine called Pacific Northwest on the real estate market of the Northwest. And one of the places that I went to go check it out was Portland. Went to some open houses, talked to some realtors. I was married at the time. It was a cool thing, right? It was a cool thing. So it was my first article published in a magazine. It was Pacific Northwest. I had a few other things published. I had a few things published in the San Francisco Examiner before it became like the weird Examiner. Like at that time, it was sort of competing with the San Francisco Chronicle. It was like the afternoon version of the Chronicle. It was a newspaper, real newspaper. Anyway, that's not a story. So here we go. Portland is going through some shit, right? Pluto's going through their 12th house. Like heavy stuff, man. Now, Jupiter is conjuncting Saturn. They've already gone through their Saturn return. And that Saturn is at the, the Virgoan degree, right? The degree of Mercury, the decan of Mercury, not quite 21 or 22, but 21. So Portland is going through some, obviously, intensity. But the 12th house is really behind the scenes. Really, really behind the scenes. And when we get into Capricorn, that represents things like hierarchies and government. So there's a lot going on with Portland right now that we don't know about, right? We can see it on the surface. We can inference things, We can try to, read into it. All we know is that they're going through a siege that's lasted, what, 2 months now? Is that how long it's lasted? 50 days? I think it's 50 days at this point. But there are things going on in this city with this Pluto-Jupiter conjunction that are pretty intense and pretty deep. So we have Jupiter squaring Pluto right now, and we're going into a Pluto-Pluto square with Portland. And I think Pluto retrogrades back to what, 2023, 22. So it's going to get right on back into that square again in the second house. And one of the things that they're doing with Portland is they're having this kind of Cloward Piven moment. If you know what Cloward Piven is, Cloward Piven were two professors. I believe there were at Yale, Harvard, two Harvard professors, right? Francis Fox Piven and Jeremy Cloward. And what they did is they figured out a way to use welfare to break the system. And it's about the depletion of resources and bankrupting a city. So what's going on in Portland isn't just the fact that these people are trying to assert their will or whatever. What they're trying to do is bankrupt the city of Portland. They want to bring Portland financially to its knees, and that's where we get into the Pluto square, because Portland has to continue to use these resources in order to do whatever to keep the city going, right? So it's a strategy. So they want to break the economy, they want to break the spirit, they want to break the will, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes here. Who is directing that? Like, who is directing this? Who are the Plutonian architects of this system crash? Because that's what's going to happen. There's going to be a systems crash. And so let's move forward here, right? Because guess what's going to go on now? We got Mars. Mars is on the march. We got Mars at 12 degrees. So Mars is going to start conjuncting Portland's natal Pluto. All right, just wrap your head around that for a moment. Kind of come in and square Saturn. All right, now, I think that that's going to be ugly. I think that's going to be ugly. I think it is going to be ugly. Now, they've said that they're not going to allow planes to fly over Portland, limited airspace. You know why? They're bringing the drones in. The drones will be capable of a lot of things. I'm like, and now people go, oh, good, drones. Like, oh, really? You want drones? Okay, all right. You want drones. So this is how they're going to deal with Portland now. They're going to use the drones to figure out how to deal with people. They're going to R&D some drone activity in Portland. And they'll have all kinds of data that they'll be able to use with those drones moving forward. I'll tell you that right now. Okay. So, but there is going to be, I think, more of a military presence. So what do we have? We got Mars right now at 12. Yeah. So 21, that's 18 days from now. Or 3 days. There, let me do the ephemeris. So 18 days from now would put us where, like the middle, right around the middle of first week in August. Let me just check it out. I was going to do Kaepernick's chart tonight, but I got so much going on. I have to do something else with that. There's a lot to talk about with Kaepernick. Craig and I really got into Kaepernick on the show. Okay, what do we got? All right. 2020. It wasn't one of my favorite bands, but there was a good little band out of LA in the late 70s, early 80s called 2020. Very good power pop band. Yellow Pills. Great song. Okay. Shout out in Chatlandia if you know who 2020 is. I saw 2020 open for Hall & Oates. Let's see, Concord Pavilion. All right, here we go. We got Mars. We got Mars action at 21. Yeah, first week in August. So the 8th of August, Saturday. That's a number that comes up a lot in the George Floyd stuff. Venus at 0 Cancer, we got Mercury and Leo at 5. And oh boy. So on the 8th, the moon goes into Leo. So we're going to have by, let's see, August 9th, that'll be 8-9. So look at 8-8. 8-8 is your day, boys and girls. 8-8. And that's the number that was George Floyd's number in, theoretically, in high school. Right? Here, I'll pop this up there for you. So you can get the visual of the ephemeris. Where am I? Right here. Now I got that song in my head. Out of Hollywood. 2020. Yeah, they're great. So are the Plimsolls. Love that era. The 3 o'clock, another LA power. I saw the 3 o'clock live one time. I always wondered why they called themselves the 3 o'clock. I think it might have had to do with the fact that maybe that's when they got out of school and went to practice. They were a good band at 3 o'clock. All right, there she is, boys and girls. Saturday the 8th. We got Sun 15 Leo. There's your moon right here in Aries. So we're coming off of the full moon on the 11th, right? So here we go. Usually softened up, tenderized, and victimized by the moon in Pisces. Very proud Mercury and Leo. Also, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in its fall, if I'm not mistaken. I have to look at that. And then we have, let's see, Venus, 28 degrees. Venus is at 0 Cancer. What do we know about 0 Cancer? That's when we had the last big eclipse, solar eclipse. Remember that? When the sun was on June 20th. When the sun was in Cancer, and we had the eclipse in Cancer. So this is going to be the energy of that eclipse erupting on that day. Not specifically for Portland, but on that day. Okay, so with Venus, to me it says that we are going to have a relationship, i.e. Venus, with that point of the eclipse. And what is the Sabian symbol for that? At sea, a group of sailors lowers one flag and raises another. So this is a change. This is a change of alliance. Now, think about this now. Think about this for a second, okay? And remember, these eclipses, we're so used to having instantaneous shit, gratification, synchronicities, whatever. But sometimes the energies of these eclipses take a little bit longer. Like, just go back and look at that eclipse in 2017, which happened at 28 Leo, which happened on Donald Trump's ascendant. What's happened to Donald Trump and what's happened to the country since that eclipse? It's split it right in two. It started up in the Pacific Northwest, to be honest with you, right? Like, it started in, Seattle, Oregon, that area, and came right on through and eventually went down through the South. So we can look at the trajectory of that eclipse as being symbolic of what's happened to the United States. It's been cut in half. And the energy of the eclipse for Trump has been, I think, probably devastating on someone. He's had 2 major eclipses, during his time. And he's had 2 eclipses on his moon since he's been in the White House. 2, not 1, 2. And, anyway, like, whoever this guy is, human, anyway, he's survived this thing so far. But it's clear that eclipse on his ascendant, especially where it's conjuncting Mars, would do a couple different things. Number one, it could either eclipse his Mars, which means it would eclipse his power, right? Or he would try to compensate for something with that Mars and engage that Mars into the shadow. And I know a lot of you follow Trump and follow the whole children thing. So, and when we look at that eclipse, it's at the 28th degree of Leo, and Leo rules children. So there could be a there. Okay. There could be a there around, having his Mars aspect move into the shadow of the sun, move into the shadow of power, right? And things are happening. There was this thing that happened speaking of shadow, the Black Forest in Germany. It was a hunting ground. Like, there was a hunting ground, and they basically routed that place. I do think there are things happening in that world. I do. Now, I'm not a believer necessarily in Q, but I do think there are things happening in that world. Why did Chrissy Teigen go run off and take down 6,000 posts on her Twitter account just because somebody was giving her beef about pizza? You don't do that. You don't do that unless you're unsure that there's somewhere in that account, something in the account that could be volatile, right? And you say, well, she's just, running smoke to, give credence to this idea that it's the pizza. I don't think so. There's enough kind of going on in that world, which really raises some serious suspicions. So that's another kind of interpretation of Trump's Mars going into that dark shadow, right? The shadow of the sun. And by the way, there's a whole underground group, whole underground society called the Black Sun Society, right? The Black Sun. There was I think his name is what was it? Harry Duncan. There was a poet, American poet. All he did was write poems about the Black Sun. Anyway, that's a whole different story, sort of. Here we go. That's it right there. That's the money shot. That's right on Portland's Pluto. We might be able to see the run-up of that in the days to come, correct? Jupiter's retrograding, and it will go past Portland's Saturn in the 12th house, right? So it's moving past Saturn. So that's an interesting kind of motion, right? Because let's just say that something like, whether it's Ted Wheeler, this could have something to do with Ted Wheeler. Like, Ted Wheeler might get taken out, or Ted Wheeler might be forced. There's something there, I think, with Ted Wheeler, with this retrograde, because the retrograde is like, it's the expansion in the 12th house is taking place. It has been taking place. But the retrograde over Saturn, to me, is indicative of something connected to this Saturnian kind of power in that part of Portland's chart. Then we have Saturn at 27. And remember, Portland Saturn is, I believe, at 21, because that's where Mars is. Then, of course, we have the retrogrades happening. And Pluto's at 23. And then Chiron is at 9. So let's go back to Portland's chart. And let's glance at Pluto. Okay, let's do that. And let me go back into the studio and bring the Portland chart up here. Yep, Black Hole Sun. That's right. I love that song, by the way. I love the Steve and Edie version of the Black Hole Sun. Have you guys heard that? General Flynn and to take the oath is very interesting. Why can't Flynn become president? Wheeler, look up the name for 13 Families Connected. Thank you, Deanna. Deanna, another Portlander. Another Portlander. We got a lot of Portland representing tonight. Some say Black Sun is not far away. Well, it's interesting. That's interesting, especially as it might relate to what? Kind of this archetypal sort of rise of, theoretical black energy. You got Black Lives Matter. You've got, these guys, NFAC. You've got these women who are throwing down black paint. I mean, no matter how you slice it, man, there's some interesting things happening in that world, in that community. There's a lot of energy going on right there. So, it's interesting to watch, right? Sit back and go, wow, that's fascinating. Because that woman came back with equal force, man. Totally equal force. So symbolically, there may be a connection there. That's right. Deanna says, I'm listening to the Copters. Bowie's last song, Joe Ness, On the Money, Dark Star. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. He was making a doc on pedos when killed. Yeah, he was doing that thing with Chester Bennington and Bourdain and that guy, Avicii, the DJ. And then one of the guys from Dave Matthews was in on it, and he got killed. I mean, they're all supposedly gone now, right? They're all very gone. Now I got Black Hole Sun in my head. All right, look, so here we go. Pluto, right there. It's going to be at 22 degrees, right? It's going to be sitting right on that Saturn. That week in August, you Portlanders, I'm telling you right now, you Portlanders, you better be on your toes. Be in a safe space. Be in a safe space, or maybe you want to go camp on the Willamette or something for a couple of weeks. The other thing that was interesting about this chart, besides all this Aquarius, I mean, obviously, this is a very, very Aquarian, very quirky, anti-establishment, and right now, rebellious city. And it's been there for a while. What else do we have important? We have the South Node in Gemini, and it's connected with the moon here, right? So it's not quite eclipse territory, not quite eclipse. Would have been more eclipse territory had they waited a little bit in November and had that sun catch up with the true node, right? And then we'd have been dealing with either a full eclipse, solar eclipse, or lunar eclipse, but not quite. So we have the South Node here in the 5th house conjunct the moon, right? And Portland, theoretically, and I've been to a number of times. I had a weird story one time about, can you imagine that? A weird story. So I was driving around, it was the summer of 1989. It was just about flip into, summer of 1990, my bad. Summer of 1990. And I was just leaving Seattle. I had no place to stay. And I was trying to find a place to live. And I saw this psychic, and she said that Portland was a place that I could, she had all these places for me to go. Like, these are good places for you. You should go to these places. And I remember them. There's Santa Fe, Charlottesville, which I thought, looking back in this weird, Asheville, Portland, Flagstaff, and then there was some town on the other side of the Canadian border, on the other side of was it Medicine? I don't know what it was. So I'm like, yeah, those other places are kind of far. I don't have a lot of money. Let me try Portland. So I went into Portland and I was looking for this place. I think I told this story before, and I found this place, and it was this group home, right? But when I say group home, not like for, invalids or anything. These were people that like had a community inside this home. But they had a patch of land across from the home where they were actually growing a lot of stuff. And I had dinner with these people, because I answered an ad. I think it's at the Willamette Weekly or something like that. And the place, the street, I think it was on the northeast side of Portland. It was called Robert Morris Avenue. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I went and had this like time there, and I talked to these people, and they said I wasn't a fit. I've told the story before. But the weird thing was, I remember this now, is I was getting gas, and I was like, okay, I'm out of here. There's no there for me. I was getting gas, and I was in this gas station in the northeastern side of Portland. And there was some weird shit that happened at this gas station. Very weird stuff. And it had to do with a so-called black guy, so-called black woman. And she pulled in, and then he pulled in. They were chasing each other. And then, they started going at it. And he started kind of beating her up. And she pushed him away. And she got in her car, and she sped off. And then he sped off. And all of a sudden, I saw some cops going, like, fuck, this place is intense, man. I'd never seen anything like that before. It was wild. So anyway, but my feeling was about Portland is that on some level, right, it felt like kind of a nice place to live. Like, and one time I spent a few days there, and I went to the YMCA there. It was the Multnomah YMCA. So I went there, living out of your car, you should use the YMCA shower. So I went and played basketball there. And that was good. It was a nice YMCA. I drive around. Man, I like this place. Shady, it's woody. I like this place. So it felt like, a nice place. But then you got that South Node there, conjunct the moon. And which means that, this is how I would say this. Now, some of you may have this. Some of you may have it, and it's not I'm not casting a personal aspersion upon you. But when you get the South Node conjunct the moon in Gemini, that's some crazy shit. Okay. It's kind of nuts. It could be good nuts. It could be good kooky nuts. I've had my experience with good kooky nuts. Okay. But South Node here. And what do we got now? We got to square with Uranus. Oh, now we're taking crazy to a whole nother level. It's embedded in that city. That is embedded in that city. You got a Uranus moon square. What do we have? We have what mutable signs right now. There's the true node. So what's the true node doing? It's accentuating the emotionality around Portland. And what are we talking about as well? We're talking about this idea, these groups like BLM and Antifa might be controlled at a much higher level by people that maybe you would say, why is that person doing that? I thought they were on our side. Just remember now, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. It may crush your Dr. Evil kind of scenario here, although Dr. Evil could be part of the mix as well. But we're dealing with a heightened sense of emotionality. Am I right? Am I right? Now, as a city, they're trying to get to the truth. Let's give them a little credit. Group expression, group activity, group burnings, all that stuff. But here, guess what? The South Node is coming in, and there are a couple of things that happen when these nodes reverse in the synodic cycle. Sometimes what will happen is that they will kind of balance each other out, and that what's weak is strong and what's strong is weak. And so there is a kind of a new homeostasis, right? Or what's stronger is less strong because what's weaker has been fortified. So when I work with the nodes, there can be a very interesting kind of homeostasis. However, there can also be a crisis with the nodes before it hits that homeostasis, which means when the true node hits that south node, that the emphasis now really is on the south node. It's like it's getting your attention. And with the south node on the true node or the north node, it is now invoking, right? It's invoking the potential here, whatever kind of potential that the true node has not established. It's like, you got to establish this now because they're out of balance. Now, that could lead towards a homeostasis. That could be the prelude to the homeostasis. So keep your eye on, this is going to be, again, that's going to be what, like in September, when, October, November, when that true node is hitting that south node right there. But, this is kind of a kooky city, with that south node conjunct the moon, and that's square to Uranus, man. So if you're odd or you want to do something different, or, you want to try to fit in a place like that, I mean, Portland could be your home. I bet your property rates are really low there right now. I think it's a good time to buy in Portland. Good time to buy, especially downtown. Think about that too. Like in a lot of ways, this could be a controlled demolition so that businesses have to leave or whatever. That property is going to be cheap. I guarantee you it won't be a ghost city. Somebody will come in there and buy that stuff and they'll get it way on the cheap. Okay. So I'm being slightly facetious, but it's true. What else do we have with Portland? We've got the Trine to Venus. So it means that, they're open to different kinds of relationships or the way of relating. Now, it's 27. That's Scorpio, right? So Scorpio in the midheaven, you got Venus and Scorpio. That's a very fixed relationship with the world. And Venus and Scorpio is kind of an intense energy. It's a very intense energy. I believe it's in its detriment here since its rulership is in Taurus. So what we have here with the trine to Venus at that 28th degree of Pisces, there's a lot of interesting like 27, 28, 27, 27, 27 with Eris, right? Those degrees are sketchy. That's when the sign is really jumping, right? It's jumping because it's about ready to die. When the sign hits 29, it just goes flat lines. There's nothing left. And then what happens, it goes to 0, and then we have the birth of the new sign, right? So when we get to 27, 28, it's like a supernova effect. It's jumpy. There's a lot of 27, 28 degrees here. So there's a lot of instability with these degrees. 27 to 28, 28 to 27. There you go. Venus, Moon, Uranus, emoting, relating, and this kind of radical driver, generator, force of change. The in conjunct with Chiron and Virgo. Chiron and Virgo, interesting Virgo stuff there in Portland. We got the vertex there. We've got the part of fortune there. And, the potential for Chiron, for Portland is here in this chart. It's here, right? It's facing the moon. And Chiron is now conjunct Regulus. So one could make a case, well, what they want to do is they want to move away from kings and authority and royalty. But I would say that is kind of, in my estimation, that is the wrong application. The right application would be a city that would be invested in service, right? In service. How can we make the city better? How can we partner with certain people that could make the city better? And then they may have thought of, okay, this is our vision of service. Not quite. So, if Ted Wheeler sat down with me to do an astrological assessment of Portland, I would say, Ted, you got to get this city working for you. That's what you got to do. You got to build partnerships, and you got to get people working for you. You got to understand, and maybe just maybe, that when the smoke clears, that this can be an actuality. But I don't think it's going to happen fully until the Saturn opposition to Chiron and Virgo. That's not going to be for another 3 years, right? And that'll come down right there. Boom. Right there. But I think Portland's sweet spot really is service. Service and healing. I don't think it's revolutionary thunder. I just don't. Although it's in the chart, and they have to work through it and have to live through it. And they have ninth house. We have ninth house Scorpio. There's Vesta there. Vesta, interesting. I'm going to get into Vesta a little bit along with Juno. And very strong ninth house Sun, the sextile to Saturn, ruler of the eighth. So once they get their head wrapped around something, like when the conditions take place, right? When the conditions take place, all the Scorpio, very fixed sign. And, they're not going to let go. And even with Mercury in Scorpio, ninth house, there's some research and native intelligence, and, there's some interesting things theoretically, intellectually, but not a city that will agree on much because of the square with Mars. This is a city that is prone to conflict and argumentation at certain levels, right? Ninth house being ideological, first house being the expression of the sort of the collective entity of the city, right? But also Aquarius being ideological. So this is a city that has conflict kind of, again, dialed into its DNA. It's a very interesting chart. But there's a lot of endurance here with the Sun, Saturn sextile. Shit, they've been at it for what, 50 days now? Right? I mean, I'm just talking about the conditions now. But I'm telling you, man, this Mars, whoa, what was that? We got a big guy right there. Who are you? All right, you're good. He's decided to fly in there. Just when I said that, right? When I said that Mars-Pluto conjunction, I jumped back because this thing just landed right on my screen. There you go. There's some synchromysticism. And then the in conjunct with Venus and the moon, like the key to Portland, like the soul of Portland, is to figure out how to get along, with the moon in conjunct to Venus. So it's like the feeling and how you relate to the feeling, right? The feeling and how you relate to the feeling, and bringing them together. And of course, Gemini, the moon in Gemini represents bifurcation and duality, which we've been talking about. And that Venus is in the 10th house. There's a lot of feminine energy in Portland. Even Mars is expressed like oddly in Aquarius. Yeah, it's Mars in the first house, but it's more unisexual. Aquarius is a sign that is unisexual. And I'll be straight up with you that when I talk to somebody who I see that has Venus in Aquarius or Moon in Aquarius, to some extent Sun in Aquarius, particularly Venus in Aquarius, I'll ask them, like, talking about partnerships, and I'll say, well, are you involved in with a man or a woman? Right? And every now and then I'll slip up and I'll assume that this person will be involved with, either a man or woman, and I'm corrected because it's like, okay. But I've learned when I see that Venus in Aquarius, right, that a lot of times it can be kind of unisexual, maybe bisexual. So even Mars, which is masculine, in Aquarius in the first house is different. It's a different version of, masculinity. It's the guy yelling out, is there a lost and found for the fucking cell phone? But there's a lot of feminine energy in Portland, right? Moon here in conjunct with Venus right on the midheaven. Maybe, I'll say this now, maybe too much. Maybe too much. Let's kick that solar in, Portland. Let's kick that solar energy in. Okay. All right. Let me see what you guys are talking about with Portland. And then I'm going to jump into the mask thing. And I was going to do Bret Weinstein. I'm going to save that for Emily's show. I think it's important. So I'm going to save all the big astrological snap, crackle, and pop with Bret Weinstein, Eric Weinstein, and guess what? There are two other Weinsteins. So what does that mean? We got brothers. We got two Weinsteins. Who's that knocking at the door? As a little Gemini. Okay. So I'm going to save that for the MASH this week, part 2 that I'm doing with Emily. So let me check in with you guys. Let's see. I've dated a lot of people with diverse backgrounds, which is ironic. What else do we have here? We got the Mormon thing. Mormons are interesting. And by the way, when I say something about a certain sign or aspect, it is not like, it's a commandment, okay? It's not. So when I say something, because a lot of people say, oh, you don't like Geminis. I like Geminis. I think they're really interesting. Oh, you don't like Aquarius. I like all signs. Trust me, I do. I like all signs. I really do. I couldn't be an astrologer if I didn't like. What am I supposed to say? Here's a fucking Gemini. Okay, how fast can I get through this? No, I like all signs. They're interesting, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say that there are, very interesting quirks and idiosyncrasies. Shit, I'm a Virgo. Are you kidding me? I'm one of the weirdos. 29 degrees Virgo. So we've got our issues, right? But I have to say, since moving to Texas, I've appreciated my Virgo more. All right, Mormon. The Mormons are a trip. See the Portland Red Guide. Okay, Deanna and the McIntyres. Right, Deanna and the McIntyres are ambassadors of Portland right now. But I just wrote in my book of Roberts, please burn that book. Burn that book. Yes. All right. Well, we have. Look, I've come to enjoy being a Virgo now. Neptune first house squares can be sexually ambiguous. Yeah, absolutely. There you go. Mark Fuller chiming in, right? There we go. What else do we have? The Mormon thing. Congress had $8 billion to reservations, $4.8 billion, 12 payments, and rest for tribal business, mostly casinos. Yeah, they know where their palms are greased. Totally. Clyde grew up as a Mormon. I'm a Clyde fan. Big time Clyde fan. One time when I told this story before, where I was hanging out with this guy at this apartment building that I wasn't a manager. I was the recreation director. And he seemed like a pretty cool guy, whatever. He taught ROTC. I told this story before. But he told me, so we wound up hanging out with his place Friday night, drinking, and my friend leaves. It's like, for me, it's like it's, did I drive home that night? I think I did. I did drive home. I was there late. Probably shouldn't have drove home, by the way. But I drove home, and we didn't. But so as he got more, shit faced, he was the guy that did special forces over in Nam, and he said, you know, the best fucking soldiers are? I said, no, who? He said, blacks, Mormons. I'm like, really? Why? He says, well, the blacks, they're not afraid to die. They're not afraid to die. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Mormons, they'll follow any order you give them. I'm like, oh, okay. So if you find yourself in a pinch, try to round up as many so-called blacks and Mormons and stick them in your army so that you can fight off the alien invasion. There we go. All right. The mask. So I began to think about this right here. This. Boom. Right? So we have the masks of comedy and tragedy. Comedy and tragedy. They're the same face, but they represent the expression of two different sides of the human experience. So I was thinking about these masks as it relates to this idea of the mask, right? The mask. And how it also very much relates to this idea of Gemini that we're in right now, the true node in Gemini. And when people wear a mask, even if it's for so-called therapeutic or medical reasons, they are concealing their identity, right? So there's a them beneath the mask and a them on the other side of the mask. That's why masks are worn, is to conceal one's identity. So there are two representations of self. There's the self beneath the mask, and then there's the self that's on the other side of the mask that's perceived by the person viewing that person with the mask. And so I began to think about this in terms of Gemini and how the whole mask operation is even of itself this kind of true node intensification. Remember, we're at 28 Gemini right now. That energy's wonky. That's really wonky. These 28th and 27th degrees of the true node are just wonky. And it's in, by the way, right? It is in the Aquarian decan. So of course there's going to be a lot of Sturm und Drang, a lot of revolutionary potential. This thing theoretically might have some potential when it moves into the Libra decan or the Venus decan, which isn't going to be really about next April, right around there. And we might have some balancing with this whole kind of Gemini intensity right now before we kick back in as it moves out of the sign and gets very intense again as it moves back into the Mercury decan. So we're really dealing with a Gemini operation on a number of different levels, right? People with the mask, people without the mask, mask people versus non-mask people, left people versus right people, people that want to think for themselves, want to be told what to do, people that want to do something for the common good, right? All that stuff. It's all polarized, Geminized stuff. And then we have the actual mask itself, the person behind the mask, the person on the other side of the mask, right? Looming in the background, the background program, Sagittarius, if you are not wearing the mask, guess what? You're going to get fined. You're going to be home detention. You're going to be locked up in your place. That's bad law. That's just bad law. And Sagittarius in the South Node is bad law, especially at the 28th and 27th degrees. There's no way you can, just slice and dice. This is bad. It's really bad. So we've established here that we're dealing with the Gemini phenomena, right? And these two masks, you can either laugh at the situation because this is fucking crazy, right? This is crazy. It is crazy. If you really think about it, this shit is crazy. And it's also incredibly tragic. It's tragic to be able to watch people get turned into fucking zombies and automatons. It's tragic. You weep for the human spirit. It's like, what has happened to this planet? What are you people just so weak that you would just conform at the slightest hint of crises? Is this all it takes? Is this all it takes to flip the world? If so, it is tragic. It is a tragic response. And then you flip over here and you just go, you gotta laugh. You just got, because if you stay here too long, you're like that family down in San Antonio who basically hooked up the hose of their tailpipe, the 2 cats and the 3 kids and the mom and the pop, and boom, right? You gotta laugh at this thing. But if you laugh too much and you think this is too much of a joke, then you're missing the tragic import, right? There we go. There we go. So, there's more. There's more. I want to get into Janus. Now the death of the king. So, Obert Achu, the death of the king happened for me when Pluto went into, I'm sorry, not Pluto, Regulus went into Virgo. That was 2016. So we're moving away from those archetypes, man. We're moving away from those archetypes. You know, and it's like, I really want to get Stefan Molyneux on my show. I saw an interview with him this weekend. He was really good. He was really good. Like that interview I saw with him might have been better than most of his shows. And I like Stefan. And I think they got rid of him. I'll tell you why they got rid of him. Because he's anti-government. Stefan Molyneux is anti-government. And I'm going to get into the Weinsteins with Emily. And the Weinsteins are not anti-government. These intellectual dark web guys are pro-government. Even if they have kind of a different version of what government should look like, they're still in the government. So I want to get Stefan Molyneux on. It was a great interview. Totally great interview. I think he's an Aquarius, by the way. Stefan, he's great. Yes, there is a Janus there. Oh yeah, we're going to get into Janus. You guys think that this is where this stops? Oh no. This is the gateway to Janus. This is the gateway to Janus. I've never dated a woman named Janus. I've never dated a woman named Janus. I don't even think I've known that many women named Janus. Really, I haven't. What is this now? Oh, there's that. I got to keep this up here. Let me throw a screenshot of this. Janus. I think I knew like one Janus growing up. Two. There was a gal named Janice Robinson. She was nice. Okay. Oh, here, let me do this. I got to do another screenshot of this. Janus, yes. This is the Janus Project, which is a movie, I think, by the way. This is the Janus Project. That's where we're in, boys and girls. We're in the Janus Project. Welcome. Welcome to the Janus Project. Let's go to the old wiki. Let's go to the old Wikipedia to take you down the path. You know, Wikipedia says, "Oh, we notice you use this service quite a bit. Perhaps you'd like to contribute since you use them." Well, you know, you blocked me from being able to add any additions, so you take me off being blocked, and maybe I'll throw you a few bones, Wiki. All right, here we go. Dun 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 dun. Libra Sun, Aquarian Moon. Dun 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 dun. That's what makes you so special, Steve. There we go. Here's Janus, right? So while the two faces represent a certain type of equanimity, they are not like our friends of tragedy and comedy, but they do represent these two versions, right? These two faces. One face representing one thing and one face representing another thing. What do those faces represent? It's a good question. Let's get into this. Janus is the god of beginnings, gates, transition, time, duality, passages, frames, and endings. Gee, does that sound familiar? Does that sound just a little familiar? We got Gates. Well, certainly. We got Bill Gates. He's in the mix, right? Even though gates are things that swing open. Transitions from one experience or one epoch to another, one situation to another. Time. Duality. There's our Gemini connection. Doorways, passages, frames, and endings. So here we go. January is the month that is usually connected to Janus, right? Ianuary. So Janus rules January. And when did all this stuff really start to take off? It started to take off in January. It was right there on January 12th. Pluto. It was the Pluto-Saturn conjunction on January 12th. Mars is in the mix. The sun was in the mix, right? That was an ending. It was an ending. It was an ending. And guess what ended? Shortly thereafter, this thing called time, right? Time. Now, it ended, the timing piece really kicked in, but it was winding down. The timing piece really kicked in, remember now, on 3/11, which was March, okay? But that's when it all happened, right? Two faces. One looks to the future and one looks to the past. So I suppose this is where we are right here. And this is theoretically the future, and this is theoretically the past. So we are now firmly in what I would call the Janus project, the Operation Janus. So Janus presided over the beginning and the ending of conflict, and hence war and peace. The gates of a building in Rome named after him, not a temple, which is interesting, as it often called, but an open enclosure with gates at each end. So this thing was like a theoretical temple, but it was not enclosed. There were gates, right? So it was a place where you could go in one direction, and then you have an experience, and then you go out the other side. Okay. So they were opened in a time of war. Sound familiar? I mean, clearly we are in a war. Now, you may say, who's the war with? I mean, it could be the war in heavens. It could be any number of versions of war. We're in a time of war. We're in a time of war. And are closed to mark the arrival of peace, which does not happen very often. All right, so the idea here is to create as much conflict, be it internal, be it with your families, be it with your friends, be it between different races, different cultures, maybe different countries, right? Create as much conflict as possible, somehow resolve the conflict, and then bring people some form of peace, but only peace delivered on certain terms and conditions, okay? As a god of transitions, he had functions pertaining to birth and to journeys and exchange. And in his association with Portunus, a similar harbor and gateway god, right? So Janus is the gates of the temple. Portunus is the gates of the harbor. I really want to get Russell J. Gould on and talk to that guy. Was it? Yeah, I want to get him on the show and talk about the whole ports thing. That guy is a Portunus. I guess we get opportunist, maybe. I don't know. He was concerned with traveling, trading, and shipping. Okay. Janus had no flamen or specialized priest assigned to him. So I guess maybe you could run a Craigslist ad for Janus's flamen, right? Yes, looking for a flamen. Looking for a flamen to service Janus. But the king of the sacred rites, Rex Sicorum himself, this is the king of everything, carried out his ceremonies. So, this was a big deal. Right? The king of kings, Rex, took care of all the ceremonies at the Temple of Janus. Janus had no ubiquitous presence in religious ceremonies throughout the year. As such, Janus was ritually invoked at the beginning of each ceremony, regardless of the main deity honored on any particular occasion. So Janus is a big deal, right? He doesn't have his own special priest, but the priest of the priests, the king of the priests, the Rex Sicorum, is the one who oversees it all, but takes special care and operation of Janus and the rituals associated with it, which apparently take place in every ritual, right? So like there may be one day devoted to, I don't know, Bacchus or whatever, right? Or, it's the Bacchus week. But in that initiation or the beginning of that ritual, they would invoke Janus. So Janus is a pretty interesting character because whenever you have a ritual or a ceremony, right, you have essentially a beginning, a middle, and an end. You have the beginning of the ceremony where you walk into a church, something happens in the church, right? And then in the end you walk, and that's anything, right? Like when you have sex, right? You walk into the, wherever it is, bedroom, you do the thing, and then you walk out of the thing, right? I mean, so there are things associated with beginning, a middle, and end. So Janus is the deity that's invoked because that's what happens. That's what happens. Okay. The ancient Greeks had no equivalent to Janus, whom the Romans claimed distinctly as their own. So remember that too. We're talking about a Roman deity. A Roman deity. Of course, we are the new Rome. All right. Then we get into the etymology, and we go into different cultures and how they have their own relationship. So the god Janus, right? Janus, which is Janus or Janus, in Latin means arched passage or doorway. And it stems from the Proto-Italic Ianu, which is a door. So we're in a time now of a door. Like we are in the gateway. We are in the in-between place, right? We have gone from so we opened a door roughly like in January on the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, 311, things end, NBA ends. So we're in between now, right? We're kind of in this place in the dark. We are in the dark temple right now. And then there theoretically is the other side. There's another door on the other side. Maybe there's more than one door on the other side. Let's sure as hell hope so. It is cognate with Sanskrit to go, to travel. In Lithuanian, it is yoti, to go, to ride. And my new favorite part of the world, Serbo-Croatian, jahati, which is to go, to go. Janus would then be an action name expressing the idea of going, passing, formed on the root ya or yo. What is that? Yotu, right? The theme too of the root igo. Interesting. All right. I'm not going to butcher that. Other modern scholars object to an Indo-European etymology, either from Dianus or from the root. Yeah. Okay. So scholars get into rubber band fights over that. All right. Ancient interpretations. 3 etymologies were proposed by ancient erudites. Ancient erudites. I hope that's what happens to me when I'm really old, that I could be an ancient erudite. Each of them bearing implications of the nature of God. The first one is based on the definition of chaos. Oh, that's interesting. Given by Paul the deacon. Be open, from which the word Janus would derive by the loss of the initial aspirate, right? In this etymology, the notion of chaos would define the primordial nature of the god. So with Janus, we have chaos. Another, we have Uranus, right? Uranus. There's a little anus in there. Interesting. Okay. Another etymology proposed by Negitius Figulus. That sounds like a made-up name, doesn't it? That sounds like a made-up name. Anyway, is related to Macrobius. Okay. Janus would be Apollo and Diana. Iana by the addition of a D for the sake of euphony, yada, yada, yada. Third etymology indicated by Cicero. Ovid and Macrobius explains the name as Latin, deriving it from the verb ire, to go. So the interpretation of Janus as the god of beginnings and transitions. So we could see sort of the etymology, the cross-cultural connections here, all sort of meaning the same thing, right? That this is a god that represents something that's connected to a thing that happened and a thing that's going to happen, and then there's something happening in between that experience, right? So we've got some fundamental nature of Janus debated, blah, blah, blah. Okay. What's interesting here is that, let me read this. Interpretations concerning God's fundamental nature, either limited to his general function or emphasize a concrete particular aspect of it, identifying him with light. Okay. So Janus is connected to sunlight or moonlight, time, movement, doorways, bridges, or else see the god in the sort of cosmological print interpreting him as a Uranic deity. Okay, so the Uranic deity, which is what we're talking about, has to do with chaos and potentially even new beginnings. But the breaking down of the previous time or the previous. So Janus is really the god of 2020. But this is the symbol of 2020. Why? Because we have the number 2, 22, but we have 20 and 20. And 20, of course, is the judgment card in the major arcana, the end of one era and the beginning of another, right? Boom. So this is the deity of our time. This is what's happening right now. And of course, it relates to Gemini as well. So his function as god of beginnings has been clearly expressed in numerous ancient sources, among them most notably Cicero, Ovid, and Varro, which we talked about, god of motion, looking after passages, causes actions to start. Well, we certainly have had a lot of action started under this Janus type experience, this Janus type program that we're in. What else do we have here? Beginnings, again, movement change, interconnected. He has under his tutelage the stepping in and out of the door of homes. Oh, isn't that interesting? Right? Because now we've got people that are theoretically in their homes because guess what? They didn't wear a mask maybe, or they have been, throw a C in front of Ovid and you got COVID, and they've been shown to have theoretical COVID-19. And now the stepping in and out of the door of the home becomes a much bigger deal than it was. Okay. The Ionua, which took its name from him, and not vice versa. Similarly, his tutelage extends to the covered passages named Ioni, and foremost the gates of the city, including the cultic gate of the Argiletum, named Janus Geminis. There we go, right there, or Porta Ionualis, from which he protects Rome against the Sabines. He's also present at the Sororium Tigillium, where he guards the terminus of the ways into Rome from Latium. He has an altar and temple near the Porta Carmentelis, where the road leading to Veii ended, as well as being present on the Ianiculum, a gateway from Rome out to Etruria. Okay, so Janus seems to be positioned at certain key places inside of the Roman kingdom, where there is a gateway leading to these other areas, right? Okay. So here we go. The connection of the notions of beginning, principium, movement, transition, euendo, and thence time was clearly expressed by Cicero. In general, Janus is at the origin of time as the guardian of the gates of heaven. Jupiter himself can move back and forth, or forth and back, because of Janus's workings. So Jupiter is essentially doing what it can do because of Janus. Very interesting. In one of his temples, probably that of Forum Holatorium, the hands of his statue were positioned to signify the number 355. the number of days in a lunar year, later 365. So it'd be interesting to see what the 355th day of this year would be, right? So it's what, it's like 10 years, 10 days before the 31st. So 10 days before that would be the 21st, right? That would put it right on the winter solstice. And that was when we had the big right there, just before the big conjunction, the big eclipse, the solar eclipse, right? On 12/25. And of course, Pluto, not quite in the mix, but there, lurking in the background. Okay. So Janus is a god of change, frequently symbolize change and transitions, such as the progress of past to future, from one condition to another, from one vision to another, and young people's growth to adulthood, which is interesting. He represented time because he could see into the past with one face into the future. Hence, Janus was worshipped at the beginnings of the harvest and planting as well as marriages, deaths, and other beginnings. He represented the middle ground between barbarism and civilization, rural and urban space, youth and adulthood, having jurisdiction over beginnings. Janus had an intrinsic association with omens and auspices. So we are in a deeply influenced time of Janus, where it all really began in the month of January with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So Leonhard Schmidt suggests that the most important god in the Roman archaic pantheon, he was often invoked together with Jupiter. So it's Janus, right? Okay, so there's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on. And there are solar god theories. Macrobius, who cites Figulus and Cicero, Janus and Diana are a pair of divinities worshipped as Apollo, or the sun and the moon, where Janus received sacrifice before all others, because through him is apparent the way of access to the desired deity. Okay, so now we're getting involved in the sacrifice, in the invocation of a deity. Very interesting. Then there's connection with the Sumeric cultures. For the two solar pillows located on the eastern side of temples, each of them marking the direction of the rising sun at the dates of the two solstices. The southeastern corresponding to the winter, and the northeastern corresponding to the summer solstice. Okay. So we get into temples and a bunch of other stuff, cult epithets. And then we have carbon Saluref. Okay, more and more stuff. But here's where I want to go. I just want to continue to go. Pater. Pater is perhaps the most frequent epithet of Janus, found also in the composition of Janus Pater. While numerous gods share this cultic epithet, it seems that Romans felt it was typically pertinent to Janus. So Janus is a big deal. Like, Janus is a big freaking deal. Geminus is the first epithet in Macrobius's list. Although the etymology of the word is unclear, it is certainly related to his most typical character, that of having two faces or heads. The proof are the numerous equivalent expressions. The origin of this epithet might either be concrete, referring directly to the image of the god, reproduced on coins, as you see the Janus coin, and supposed to have been introduced by King Numa in the sanctuary at the lowest part of the Argoletum, or to feature the Janus of the Portabelli, which is that double gate which I brought up. So this is all kind of historical representations of people who would be either defining the qualities of Janus, trying to place them in a certain part of their cosmology, right? Okay. So the winter solstice was thought to occur on December 25th. Remember, that is when we had the big eclipse. That big eclipse, the big fucking eclipse, when Saturn and Pluto were conjunct. It was right on December 25th, 26th. That's when it was all crossing over southern China and Hong Kong, right? That eclipse. On 1 January was a new day. The day was consecrated to Janus. So it's the first day of January, right? Since it was the first day of the new year of the month, that's why I guess you make your, you go out and, on the, the 30th of December, you're cool. And and you step into that portal of December 31st, you go nuts, you go crazy, and then you're reborn again on January 1st. You have your New Year's resolutions. And if you say them loud enough, the Janus will hear you. Okay. Cakes were made of spelt and salt, and they were offered to the god and burnt on the altar. Oh. There was some figs and honey, well-wishing. It's a good time. Let's see. So it's the beginning of the month, okay? At the calends of each month, the Rex Sacrorum and the Pontifex Minor offered a sacrifice to Janus. Okay, so this is interesting. So when we get to the beginning of the month, it is a day of Janus, because January is the first month of the year. And the 1st of January is the day of Janus. So every first of every month is the consecration of Janus, right? Theoretically. So if you have a spare lamb around on the 1st of the month, you offer it up to Juno, not Janus. The beginning of the day, that is a Janus event because it starts something off, right? And Horace calls him the Matutine Pater, which is the father, right? Or the father of the morning. Okay, so this is why they believe Janus is a solar deity. So Janus is also involved in spatial transitions. We talked about that, from one place to another, protector of doors and gateways. Okay. The rites of the Sally, this goes on and on. So there's a lot here, and I really encourage you to kind of get into this sort of deeper representation of Janus, because the other thing that Janus is connected to is also Juno and Vesta. Juno and Vesta. See, there's all this kind of amazing that a temple named Janus Geminus, his temple was Janus Geminus, that had to stand open in times of war. It was said to have been built by the king Numa Pompeius, who kept it always shut during his reign, as there were no wars. After him, it was closed very few times. One after the end of the First Punic War, 3 times under Augustus, and once by Nero. It is recorded that the Emperor Gordonius III opened the Janus Geminus. Interesting. It's a temple connected with war and peace. So there's a lot going on. There's also the thing with Janus and sailing techniques. So I want to get to the Juno stuff here. Janus and Juno. Okay. The relation between Janus and Juno is defined by the closeness of the notions of the beginning and transition and functions of conception and delivery, because Juno is related to conception, right? Juno is the result of youth and vital force. Juno is often, to me, of the asteroids, it's often associated with the spring equinox, right? Juno is the ripe bride, the ripe and juicy bride, waiting to procreate. That's what Juno represents, right? There's also at times a virginal quality associated with Juno. So we can associate Juno with passion and fertility. Where you have Juno in your chart might indicate that you might have a sort of passion or fertility about that certain house that it's related to, or the sign that it's related to. And through there can also be some kind of consecration involved, right? And then you move on to Ceres, who becomes the nurturing mother. So, the kind of the final conclusion to these feminine archetypes in the asteroids happens to be Vesta. So here we go. Juno, Vesta shows up here too. So the reader is referred to the above sections, cult epithets, in Tagillum Sororium of this article to connect with Juno and Janus. Okay. Then here's Juno, Janus, and Vesta. And the relation between Janus and Vesta touches on the question of the nature and function of the gods beginning and ending, because Vesta is an ending, right? Vesta is, theoretically, it is the oldest of the feminine archetypes of expression. But what's also interesting about Vesta is it's connected to virginity, right? And this idea of the Vestal Virgin or the Vesta Virgin, and this virginity where, this flame burns, right? Because when you look at Vesta astrologically, it looks like a flame. So it's like this flame that burns, and maybe you hold the flame for somebody or something. You keep that flame burning, right? You're not allowing anything else to come into that space. You come into that place because that thing you're holding close. You're keeping that light lit. You're keeping the pilot light on for something very specific in your life as it relates to Vesta. It also, to me, is very much related to the way shower or the candle or the lamp, right? Because Vesta, as it lights your way, as you keep that light lit in yourself or your experience, then you could be a way shower for others. Vesta is quite interesting. And here they talk about Vesta as being virginal, right? So while Janus has the first place, Vesta has the last, right? Because when you look at those goddesses of the archetypes of the goddesses of the asteroids, Vesta is the final one, both in theology and in ritual. The last place implies a direct connection with the situation of the worshiper. Now, theoretically, right, Vesta would also bring what? Illumination. Because if you walk through the gate of Janus, right, and there's this experience going from where you are to where you've been to where you are, whatever happens there, and then you're on the other side, that other side represents Vesta, which is the conclusion. And theoretically, the light would go off. You say, okay, I got it. I know where to go now. Okay. And that's really important when you're going through transitions in your life. Because remember, Janus is this deity of transitions. And holy shit, are we not going through transitions? Are we not going through transitions? We're going through transitions collectively, individually, in relationships. We are in it. We are in it. And hopefully when that gate swings open and we're on the other side, and we will be on the other side, that light is not snuffed out. That pilot light is stayed on. You've kept that inner candle burning. And by the time you get to the other side, right, it illuminates where you need to go and what you need to do. Okay. Vesta is a virgin goddess, but at the same time, she's considered the mother of Rome. Who does that sound like? She's thought to be indispensable to the existence and survival of the community. Okay. Now, here's where it gets super interesting. Super interesting. Because there's also a Sumerian connection with Janus. The ancient Sumerian deity, Isamud, is Janus. Check this out. All right, so here we have Ishtar. Nice set of wings there. Ishtar, also known as Aoster or Easter. And here we have Shamash, who's whacking away in the fields there, bringing in the sheaves. And here's our good pal Enki, right? Look at the relationship with Enki and fishes. Enki is very interesting, right? Fishes, they come to him. Enki theoretically has also been shown as being very much connected to the ocean, at times often appearing as Capricorn himself, looking a lot like Janus, another kind of seaborn god, right? So we have Enki here, and looks like we have the eagle, correct? Right here. Looks like it's an eagle. Could be wrong. No, it's that. What is that? That's a ibis, egret. It is. I'm sorry, I'm not up on my Sumerian fowl, but we have the air, right? We have water here, water, and then below here we have earth. So we have three elements that Enki is theoretically mastering, or at least is in command of. And Enki, we know through the records, is the master geneticist, right? Enki, also known as Ea being earth, right? This is Enki's place. And then here we have, guess who? Isamud, the Janus character of the Sumerian mythology. How about that? How about that? Very interesting. And there's probably even a story here if we read this right to left, right? So this is the past. This is the past, and this is the future, right? And we don't know what's on the other side of this cylindrical seal, but this is the future, and this is Enki mastering, right? Mastering life forms, the air, the earth, elements of the ocean, right? And then we have Shamash, who is the reaper, and reaping and controlling things like grain, lives, and then overseeing everything here is Ishtar, the queen of heaven, right? The big mama, the big Sumerian mama. So this is quite interesting. So this is the past, and this is the future that Isamud is pointing towards, which is, I believe, the creation of the human race. Right? This is what I think this is about. This was before they got there, and this is what happens after. Shamash brings order, right? He brings order to things. Fuck around, you deal with Shamash. There we go. Check him out. Divine justice, right? He brings order, divine justice. So Utu Shamash, sun god, brings the law of the world. That's exactly what he does. And he's the twin brother, here we go, twins again, of Inanna, the queen of heaven, right? Interesting. So we go back again, and what do we see? We see the cosmology. We see creation with Enki and mastering nature, right? We've seen Shamash, the bringer of order and law, and then we see Ishtar, right? And Ishtar overlooking everything, overseeing everything, right? And she rises above everything because she's the only one that has wings. So she has the ability to rise above the situation and to view creation in ways that these other entities who are involved with it cannot be able to see or experience. Therefore, based on her position, theoretically, this is an entity that can render judgment, right? So there we go. Old Isamud telling the story. You were here, we were there, and here's where we go. All right, we are in the time of Janus. And I think it's pretty clear that that's where we're at. The Gemini code. Okay? Tesla hats. There you go. Biden is the problem. Mary was Ishtar. Yeah. Right. There we go. Well, it's a whole other discussion. That's an interesting discussion. But clearly, they were talking about, even in the Roman experience, when I mentioned Vesta as the mother of Rome, right? And Vesta's a virgin. Okay. So there are a lot of these pieces that are connected very much. Okay. Let's see. Christos is supposed to be Sophia's sacred consort. All right. What do we have here? Let's see. Anything here in chat? Anything chatty that we want to bring up? After midnight. All right. I've been running a long time here. I got a late start. You guys are great. Still 216, you hanging out. Anything else? Okay. All right. John Levy put out another reset video today. Oh, good. I like John Levy. I like his style. One of these days, I'd like to show up as the Sam Elliott character in the Big Lebowski. I'd like to walk in to John Levi's coffee shop, dressed like that guy, and say, John, I like your style. Okay. Yes. Janus is connected to the Etruscans. That's on that page, the Wikipedia page. Feel free. Dive into the Janus well. Very important deity, and seems like a very appropriate anchor, transition point, metaphor for our time. Okay. All right. You guys have been great tonight. Thanks for hanging in there. I really appreciate you. I'll be back tomorrow, 15 minutes of flame. I didn't get into the Weinstein stuff. I'm going to save that for the show with Emily. You find John Levy strangely attractive. Yeah, there's something about John Levy's got that kind of weird, geek, slightly gothic, dark vibe about him. I get it. I totally get it. You guys are funny. Yeah, I think John Levy's got a little bit of a crush. He's got a crush club. All right, 8:45 is good. All right, man, I'm gonna shoot for it. Okay, I'm gonna shoot for it. I'll do my best. You mean 8:45 tonight or 8:45 in the morning? Which 8:45 you talking about? AM, PM? Where's it at? Weinstein on Weinstein. We're going down the Weinstein rabbit hole. Now, I've been thinking about Weinstein, the name Weinstein, right? So wine is vine, right? Vine. And then, Stein could be stone, but it could also be related to like a stein that you drink something out of, right? So we have a Weinstein or a Weinstein, and when I think about that, what do I think about? I think about the chalice, right? Where they, got the blood of the Grail, the Holy Grail, but that's a whole nother discussion. All right, I'm out of here. Thank you. Use your head in order to discern what's really hard to stay what's possible. If you like this show, go ahead, support it, subscribe. New website comes up this week, and I got to go work on some stuff for it right now. All right. God bless you all. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'm signing out.